When we started planning this year's Ultimate Sports Bike test, we realised we had a bit of a problem. Ducati V4S aside, there are no new models for 2022. So we asked ourselves what would make a cracking used sports bike test, capped on price but not on brilliance, full of Exotica with machines just like these.
So having decided to do a used Ultimate Sports Bike test this year, the very next question was what budget should we set? Well, we looked at the current crop of new litre bikes and identified the Kawasaki ZX-10R as the best value at £16,500, which is a whole lot of bike for the money. So we hit the internet and this is what we came up with. So it's 2012. The BMW S1000RR has been out already for 2 years and BMW decided they need to get some parts homologated for racing. So they came out with this, the HP4. HP standing for high performance, 4 for 4 cylinders. What they did with this bike was, top of the list, they added the electronic suspension, which was a first for any production motorcycle. Electronically, it was otherwise pretty much the same as the S1000RR, but it did get launch control, which was another first for a production motorcycle. The main parts that they really wanted to homologate were the wheels and the exhaust system. Full titanium exhaust system, forged wheels, which brought this bike in at a light 199 kilograms. They did do a special version of the HP4, which is this one we've got here, the HP4 Carbon. Imaginatively called Carbon because it's got a full set of beautiful carbon bodywork, carbon exhaust hangers. It's also got the rear sets and fancy brake levers. The 2010 Ducati 1198S Corsa Special Edition. Probably the longest name for any motorbike that's ever been sold. This was brought out by Ducati when they set up their whole Corsa racing department, hence the black, red, white paint job. The only thing really different about this and an 1198S is customers got the full Tomagnoni exhaust system, ECU and a flash paint job. The fuel tank is brushed alloy, left bare, it's just lacquered, and it's a couple of litres bigger than the standard bike. Basically, the 1198 is coming to the end of its life. The Panigale V-twin is just around the corner, and this is really Ducati's last hurrah with their trellis frame. The 2013 MV Agusta F4RR. The F4 has been around for a long time by now, in all sorts of variants and different size engines. This has got the 1000cc high-revving short-stroke engine. And the RR version in particular not only comes with that, but the internals of this engine have been thoroughly worked over. Of all the bikes in this test, this one has had the biggest amount of work done to it. Titanium conrods, fancy valve springs, lighter crank, and a claimed 200 horsepower. Probably a first for a sports bike. We've also got electronic suspension on this bike too. A truly rare bike.
So the plan is simple. We've got a few days on the road before heading to Cadell Park with these 3 beauties to really stretch the legs and push them to the limits. To power us through the test, we've got Michelin's proven Power GP tyres.
Three days ago, we rolled the dice. We decided rather than doing a contemporary bike test, we'd get these used icons together, put them through the paces, on the road, on the track, and just see what they had to offer. See if there was enough here in this Exotica to win us over compared to the most affordable litre bike on the market today. It's been a belter of a test. I've really enjoyed it. We've had the weather, we've had the roads, beautiful Lincolnshire roads, we've had Cadell Park. It's been awesome. The question is, for all of us, have these bikes worked their magic? So from right to left, we're going to start off with the MV. And I'm going to start the conversation by saying that this, in my opinion, is the best looking bike of the trio. If you're vain like to me, you're going to be drawn to this.
No.
It's a beauty. It looks lovely, it looks sporty, it looks aggressive. It still looks, in today's money, really quite stylish and everything that I would want from a sports bike. I mean, what about you guys,
Well,
looks-wise?
you know, says the man who uses hairspray before he goes on camera. The MV, when we went to Spilsby Bike Night, definitely got the biggest amount of attention. We parked them all up.
Yeah, which broke Tim's heart because he went there, the superstar, local bike show. And he did actually get your photograph taken, didn't you, in the chip shop?
Saying hello. How many do you get, Bruce?
Well, I was stood by you, so they had to say hello to me as well.
fair,
But
they were
I think you were a
relatives
bit
though, weren't they?
wounded. Yeah, they were.
There's everyone related up here.
He
in
owed one
Lincolnshire.
money and he was related to the other.
Here we go. Does look good, but the performance has slightly tainted it for me, so I'm now leaning more towards the Ducati again. But yeah, I can't argue, it does look, it's different, and you don't see many around either, do you? They're quite unique and special, I guess, aren't they?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think that when you look around this bike, you know, you haven't got to look too hard, especially because immediately you're drawn to the dash and you can kind of see that it's old school by today's values. You know, it's a dot matrix screen that's kind of weathered a bit, and yeah, just even the button functions and stuff like that. It's definitely a little bit past its sell-by date, you could say. But when it comes to riding, I don't think any of us were completely sold on it, especially on the road.
Yeah, I think on the road it was just really, because the engine dominates the bike so much. So in some ways in the wrong way on the road, but in the right way on the track.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what it was like on track. I ruled myself out of the track riding today, obviously, because of a previous injury flared up. But I can only imagine what that was like.
It was certainly better on the track than it was on the road.
Yeah, because on the road it's a little bit flat. It has to build and build and build and build and build, and then it goes. So, you know, and you want something more than that on the road, I think, a little. You want something that's a little bit more immediate, a little bit more there in your hand.
Yeah, you just got to wind it up and keep it singing, haven't you? A bit more like a 600 style.
The problem is on that, because it makes so much power, if you ride it like that on the road, you're doing 1,000,000 miles an hour, aren't you?
Yeah, when it does go, it's ballistic, isn't it?
To be fair, MVs tend to have that top end buzz about them.
Yep.
You know, especially the
signature,
inline fours. Yeah, they want you to get up the top, and as you say on the roads, what it means is you've got that flat bottom end and this mental top end that you shouldn't access. Is probably the way I'm going to phrase it. You can access it, but you maybe shouldn't. That was the biggest kind of hang up for me. The engine just not being as usable as you'd want, coupled with a quick shifter that was a bit kind of mediocre.
The electronic suspension wasn't too bad on it, considering that's probably one of the first systems that Öhlins did.
Yeah. It's one of the earliest.
We've got the BMW here, we'll come on to that in a bit, and that is the first production bike to have the electronic suspension on. But that will be one of, if not the first, to have the active Öhlins stuff on there. And actually, I thought it was quite decent, actually.
Yeah, I think the thing is with this bike here, like you say, the suspension is good. It definitely always felt on the firmer side. And I should say that with this bike here, you can go into the settings of the electronic suspension and tweak away. There are also free rider modes, so you can kind of dumb the damping down, if you like, and alter it that way just through going mode by mode by mode if you want to do. The thing is, it's a very stiff chassis, and it feels a very compact bike as well. Like, it felt a little bit nervous on the roads. You'd hit a few potholes at speed.
It's light as well, isn't it?
Too firm for the roads, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was too firm and too focused, and it just was very unforgiving. So yeah, it didn't kind of win me over with confidence. And I think the other big thing to talk about on the road is you are properly perched up.
Yeah.
You're kind of arse up, head down, loads of weight on your wrists. Your feet, you know, you may as well kind of tuck your knees under your chin. It really does fold you in half, doesn't it?
Your feet are somewhere up around your lungs, aren't they?
Yeah.
All these bikes are uncomfortable for me because I'm 6'3", and
yeah,
you know, I'm obviously not as small as you two.
Athletic.
Small. So that bike was, for me, that was just purgatory. That bike was riding that from a riding position point of view. But you know, that's just me. But what's frustrating is it's a physically large bike. You know,
yeah, everyone's
but it's
saying
got
how
such
long
a tiny
it looks.
thing.
Everyone's saying it looks massive. How does it feel on track? It's so long, but actually it doesn't really feel like that when you get on it, does it?
Cramped, isn't it?
I should say, I mean, you're saying about how long, how big it is. This has also got the smallest surface area and, you know, screen to hide behind.
Yeah,
so
real low screen,
it makes you work, this bike. It puts you in the position it wants you to be in. You have to adapt to that, and if you don't, it's not very compromising. Other points to make, the brakes. Even on the road, we could kind of tell that they weren't going to be fantastic on the track. They were just a little bit lackluster in their bite, the feel. just didn't.
Bit of an ABS kick almost.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can switch the ABS off on this, and that was the best thing we did all day because that was very keen to kick in, wasn't it?
But didn't take long for him to fade though, did it?
No, well, on track, but I mean, on the road, it kind of held its own. If you turned the ABS off, then it was fine. I think it had the weakest brakes of all of them and probably the worst feel as well. They're the least trusting. So yeah, I guess even just something as simple as that, and also technology-wise, like the switch gears and stuff like this on it. I mean, there's not loads to go through.
Looks a bit cheap, to be fair. If you ask me, these buttons.
It's just not at all intuitive, though, is it?
No.
No. When we was at the track,
trying
to adjust the suspension, I accidentally managed to do the adjustment. I still don't know how I did it.
Yeah.
But I did. I think we wanted to put some compression into the forks or something like that, wasn't it? And you left me sort of to it, and off I went. And then suddenly, bashing away at the buttons, it was there in front of me, and I was able to do it, but I couldn't tell you how I did it.
As a track bike, Tim, what's your take?
Well, I was hoping it was going to be better than it was on the roads, and to be fair, it didn't disappoint. It certainly was better on the track. Like you say, that focused riding position, and by far the quickest to steer through the corners. Change of direction was light and easy. It held its line, that was all good, but the worst thing for me was going down the gears. So when you're like approaching park straight in fifth gear and you're braking hard, you seem to get a lot of weight transferred to the front. When you bang down 3 gears, let the clutch out, it just seems to want to back in. There's so much engine braking from the downshifts that you've almost got to bring everything back a step. You just cannot attack a corner with it.
Yeah, I had that, especially down into Mansfield. It was almost, when you brake in, you almost want to kind of let the wheel speeds balance themselves out by either kind of pulling a little bit clutch in or whatever. It was just awkward. There was a lot of back torque from those downshifts, and it just wasn't nice.
It's almost like the slipper clutch wasn't quite tuned for the bike, and obviously it's hard to. I find it quite hard to slip a clutch with a hydraulic clutch as well. It's not a nice feeling through the lever.
Well, that's what you lack, isn't it? Feel.
So
exactly that.
It's not like you can sort of slip it yourself as easily.
Yeah. Power-wise, I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, kind of coming out of some of the slower corners, like bar and onto the straight and all that, you know, it was quite exciting. It definitely sounded exciting as well. It's got a proper buzz from that underseat exhaust system. I did like that, but I just kind of, it wasn't enough to win the rest of the bike over. I didn't find, as quick as it was at turning, it wasn't very stable. That was another thing. And it always felt like you were running right at the bottom of the stroke. It didn't matter what we did with that suspension.
No.
All the time running at the bottom of the stroke, and that was unnerving, you know, when you are hard on the brake, and especially at a track like Cadwell, where you have got those direction changes or those additional bumps you don't get on some other circuits. There was nothing else to give, and you're already down there. So that was a bit unnerving, and maybe, you know, if you spent a bit of time or, you know, did something with the air gap or whatever, you could probably dial that out a little bit, but just as it is, it didn't kind of...
Didn't quite come together, did it?
I didn't set my soul on fire, you know?
You kind of got to do everything on its terms.
Yeah, that is exactly it. Yeah.
I felt like I was riding on 10 hooks with it.
It's like you were saying about the clutch. You know what I mean? You've got to backshift the way it wants backshifting.
Can't relax.
You have to do it its way, not the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
But I mean, to me, it felt the fastest out of the 3 bikes.
Look quick.
It really did come into its own speed-wise. It was just rapid when you get it in them right gears.
Yeah, no, it was all right. And I guess even on that note, I mean, just to say this bike has got traction control. So of the systems it has got, which are very few, so you've got basically electronic suspension and steering damper. You've got ABS either on or off. And you've got traction control, which you can kind of wean all the way down or keep all the way up. On the road, we had it in S, which is like the street map. Or sports, or we don't even know.
No, MV, it could be the rain mode. S is for rain.
It was just weird, but definitely I did know this, that when we were at Cadwell and I kind of went out, I did 1 lap with it in R, which we thought was race, and it was the least racy thing I've ever ridden in my life. I kind of could not wait. I went out behind you, and you just vanished, because that thing was saying, no, you're not having any throttle, you're not having anything. Pulled straight in, changed it to
rain
C.
mode. And then S is probably sport.
It was just shocking. So I guess to surmise this one, pretty, but doesn't perform.
Yeah. Right, so let's have a look at the BMW then. What do you reckon, Johnny? You've spent most time on this, haven't you, with a dodgy hip?
Yeah. Me and the BMW got to know each other quite well over the last few days because of the aforementioned dodgy hip.
Reason why, though, isn't it? Because this big, roomy.
Exactly. You know, you're dead right. This is. You know, you forget how. So essentially, this is the first generation BMW S1000RR, but obviously a souped-up version.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's amazing how BMW got this bike so right. At the time, this was absolutely game-changing. It was like, you know, witchcraft, this bike. How could it be something to be so comfortable and so fast and handle so well and have toys and heated grips?
Yeah.
All in the same bike. It's a terrible cliche to use, but this bike changed everything now.
Yeah,
This was the bike that today's bikes, you know, were measured against when they were conceived. It's just a lovely thing to ride on the road. I would love to have tried it on the track as well, to be honest.
I can't believe how similar it feels to the M1000R.
Really?
That we tested in last year's big test. It literally, the riding position and like frame geometry feel is pretty much identical.
Yeah.
BMW's been really consistent throughout. I mean, I was on the launch of this bike in Jerez 2012, I think it was, and as Johnny said, you know, it was kind of a flagship of innovation and excitement, and it was that weird thing of suddenly you had suspension that did the thinking for you. That was the big sell, plus, you know, the changeable traction control on the fly on a button. It was all new and exciting, and all this time on, you know, actually 10 years on from that launch, we're still here.
It still feels fresh, doesn't it?
It does, and it doesn't look wrong. It rides great.
Yeah.
On the road, as you said, this was the armchair, this was the comfy seat, this was the one probably we would all put our money down on if we wanted a road bike, because it just accommodated in ways that the others didn't. It didn't try to be spicy and exciting or exotic. It just said, do you know what? I'm going to give you a great engine, some great brakes. I'm going to take out all the bumps and all that kind of stuff with decent suspension. And you're even going to have a screen you can fit behind it. Away you go. Yeah.
It's the total opposite of the MV, isn't it, in that regard? It's like where the MV is everything on its terms, sorry. This is somehow a package of performance that even today still feels, you know, you can see where today's bikes have come from. You can trace them back to this bike. You can. There's a direct line back to this bike, and you can see it. But the really clever bit about this bike, is how BMW made it all so easy to get at.
Yeah.
It's a people pleaser, isn't it? I think everyone would be happy to ride this.
Yeah.
Whereas these other two are a bit more specialist. You're going to get your
You've got to be into them, haven't you?
You've got to earn it on these two.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is actually, if we're going to be critical about this, you know, that's probably one thing that, you know, you might mark against it. You might not, depending on how you like your bikes. I quite like to earn my sort of speed, let's say, and excitement. So I don't mind working a little bit for it. So for me, because it's so easy on this, it could be accused of being a bit bland, which is ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
It sounds a ridiculous thing to say, but
it lacks character.
But I think that's a personal choice. You know what I mean? For me, I quite like to earn. It's a little bit like why I like 600. I don't mind bashing up and down the gearbox and working for it.
It's funny because I mean that was a criticism we've had of the S1000RR and the M1000RR, that they're brilliant and they do a great job, but they just lack that character and that engagement. And I don't know where you draw the line with that, because it's almost one of those things. It's like employing someone and they turn up at 9 and they finish at 5 and they do more work than anyone else, but they don't come down the pub with you and they don't kind of do this or don't do that. You can't berate them. You've got to applaud them.
It seems really mean pulling it up for that. And I feel a little quite bad about doing that, but you know, that's what we're saying. These are the comments that we make during the last few days, so we've got to put them out there.
Bit of a plain Jane.
Yeah, I think that's it.
But this HP4 version though is a beautiful looking thing, isn't it? And the forged wheels on it, I do believe, make a difference. You know, you can feel it feels so light and manoeuvrable on the road.
It wasn't as quick to turn as the MV.
Was it not?
It was the heaviest on track, definitely.
What I didn't like on the track was them swept back handlebars, which are fixed.
Yeah.
They're so far back in the corners. It just felt, I was a bit like, almost a bit of a tucking sensation, which I wasn't into really, but Other than that, it's fast, isn't it?
It is fast. I mean, I hopped onto this off of the MV and I got on it and I was just like, what am I riding? I was so low in the seat, stretched out with that's how it felt, long and low. And it kind of took me a good few laps to kind of get my head around it. But actually, as you said, it was so fast. It was the connection with the throttle was beautiful. We were talking about this. There's a little bit of a lag with the throttle pickup, which is actually just a forgiving trait.
Yeah.
You know, instead of something exploding in your hand and
Yeah,
you having to
making it
nurse
easy
it.
for you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There was that little bit of, do you know what? We're getting ready for it. We're gonna,
Brace
and then
yourself.
bang, away you go. And
Tell you what, when it does come in though, it almost goes, it's a bit like the M1000 was last year, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
goes
yeah,
low in
yeah.
the rear and it almost goes light on the front. But I do like the quick shifter on this. It's so like positive and it just feels like a modern quick shifter.
Yeah.
These other two are quite a bit clunky, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? A bit.
you've got to hope and pray a little bit with those, haven't you?
and a few false neutrals, but this is just like precise, isn't it?
Final point on this is that it's, because like you say, it's got the quick shifter but not the blipper, which really is a sign of its age. But that said, this is by far the most modern feeling bike out of all of these. You cannot, there's no direct line between that and the current
No.
It looks the most
top of the range
modern as well.
Ducati, and that, well, it's probably exactly the same as today's actually, if we've been,
Just
we've been
maybe,
honest.
yeah.
But this is the most modern feeling bike here, and the closest relation to, like we've said, the Kawasaki ZX10 is really the sort of price point bike that we're.
I think I'd sooner have this.
I was just about to say that.
ZX10.
I think I would actually have this over the ZX10.
If you put this into road superstock trim now, it would feel like a
go
modern
up.
superstock
Yeah,
It would
bike.
go up.
Yeah.
And it'd
It would
be
go.
mint.
There's people still
Yeah.
racing these at the Northwest. And
Yeah.
you see them
They
out
haven't come on that much more
No.
since this.
No. I think also BMW was kind of in its heyday, you know, around this
there.
time,
Well, they just happened. This is 2 years after they turned
Yeah.
up and went,
Yeah.
that's the S1000 RR, here
Yeah.
you go. And everyone went, whoa. And then they followed it up with this and went, oh yeah, we've done that one, but with this and this as well.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, whoa.
Just the detail on it as well. The nice top yoke,
Yeah.
the Gillies adjustable levers, the rear sets. Yeah, it's been well finished as well as all that carbon. It costs a lot of money. I think back in the day this was the best part of like 19
big
something.
money, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 19 grand or something like that. But you can see that you were buying into
You can see
something.
where it is, yeah. No, great bike.
Let's have a look at this weapon.
Come on then. Let's have a look at the Ducati then, guys. The 1198S Corsa Special Edition, to be exact. What do we think of it?
Do you know what? I think aesthetically, I like what they've done with it. Again, a bit like with the HP4, there's enough carbon on it, and yeah, there's enough areas that draw you in. The Olin suspension, the Brembo brakes, the dry clutch, which is just fantastic. There's a lot of hooks to this, and I really like the exposed alley tank as well.
I'm going to stand by what I said earlier on about this being the better looking of the MV, I think. Just that exposed frame, dry clutch, that exhaust, which you just don't really see that much nowadays, do you?
No, I think it's aged really well, this bike, for me. You look at the modern bikes, even in Ducati's range, and they're all wings and sharp edges and lines. I think me and Tim, me and you were talking about it at one point, weren't we? And I don't know if we completely agreed on it, but I said, look, how much more prettier this is than today's Panigales, the V4s, like I say, which are all sort of sticky outer things and all the rest of it. It's just a really neat bike. But this is Ducati at the end of the trellis frame layout. This is their final hurrah, really, before they go on to the Panigale with the frameless. Still with the V-twin, but the 1199. I love this bike. I really, really did. It's just a strange bike to ride, and you have to sort of get to know it. Unlike the MV, where you have to work on its terms, it's not like that. It's just got little sort of quirks about it, like its gearing's really, really long, isn't it? And it's got this really wide seat, but it's really narrow at the frame. And at really low revs it sort of judders and all the rest of it, and then when the engine starts spinning up, it's absolutely beautiful. It's just a fabulous engine for the road, and as soon as you touch that throttle at low revs, you're straight into the fun zone with it, and that's what I love about it. It's just whoop, whoop, straight away.
It was my favourite bike to ride on the road.
Yeah.
I love it, like you say, it's thin in the middle, so it feels, it's thin between the legs and it's nimble.
Yeah.
And you thought it was maybe a little bit aggressive on the road, but for me, it was in my hand, and I thought it was real smooth and just just seemed to be real nice to cruise around on the roads.
Yeah, I wasn't sold on the motor initially.
Slow
I'm going to
burner
say
for you,
now.
wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was kind of like.
But that's
you know,
the sort of point I'm making, isn't
Yeah.
it? It takes a little bit of...
Well, I think it's this simple. In today's world, we are living with inline fours, and when you get back on a big V-twin,
Big one, yeah.
it's almost like hopping on a motocross bike. There's a big explosion when you touch that throttle, and it is, as you said, so instantaneous that if you're not prepared for it, it can be a bit of a handful. And I didn't find it relaxing. I kind of found, you know, it was so vibey and jangly, and you're just not a clinical inline four motorcycle. You know, it was vibrant in
Makes
different
funny
ways.
noises, the rattly
Yeah,
clutch.
yeah, and it was kind of just, I don't know, I have warmed to this bike, I should say.
Getting a bit old, aren't you? I think it's time to hang your levers up nearly, Bruce.
Mate, you've been all big and brave, but I did get it into third gear.
I think you need to get touring bikes. Get rid of fast bikes.
Slow bikes.
Slow bikes.
I did find that actually this bike felt stable, but it wasn't fast turning. You know, I don't know, maybe it was no slower than the BMW, but it was definitely not on a par with the MV. And I like that about the MV on the road in particular. So it just felt like it had to work a little bit harder to get it around the corner, and that's, I don't know, maybe I'm just being lazy.
No, I think you've hit on something there. The whole architecture on this bike is totally different to these other two, which is why I think it takes a bit of time to adjust to, because you have a very different geometry, and it's all because of that engine layout.
I mean, for road comfort, it was actually quite good. The seat's decent. It does get a little bit hot, as does the MV.
Yeah, hot, yeah.
But the handlebars, you know, they're okay. It's not putting loads of pressure. Good protection from the screen. The brakes were actually really good. I was surprised by just how decent they were. They had some grab about them, and you know, it was nice and easy to kind of trundle around on and feel safe on. It was a good road bike. Even the mirrors worked, which is very Ducati, isn't it? Yeah. So
it looked amazing and sounded brilliant on the track, though, those exhausts. I mean, you were hopping it up over the mountain there too, and it looked, you know.
Well, I was buzzing to get this on the track after having such good feel with it on the road, but Johnny thought he'd do me a favour and give me traction control on one, didn't you?
Yep.
And literally, I thought we had a fueling problem. It took all the power away, and it was like a lumpy fueling at the bottom.
Didn't like it.
And I thought, what is all that about? Maybe it's just because we're going a bit faster. But came in and switched it back to turn it off, and once again it was right back up there, and it was just.
Well, that touches on that point again. That reveals really the age. That's what sort of gives it away. Now we've got IMUs, and they control the traction control in all these different ways.
Basic electronic
system. Ride by wire, the full ticket. You know, this is just wheel speed sensors, and that's it. So, you know, when you activate the traction control, which we hadn't got on the road, that was off, put it on the track like we did on all of them, to give it a chance to see what it was like. It was like going back to the very, very early days, the sort of beginnings of traction control. And you can tell,
It was an awkward time, actually, wasn't it, when the system started coming through and every bike was different. But, I agree. I mean, I picked up...
It's very unrefined.
Yeah, I picked up the pieces after you'd turned the traction control off. So my first experience of this bike on track was really quite good, despite the fact that it took too much effort, especially when you're on the throttle, to kind of steer through some of the longer corners. It was not what I wanted it to be, but
just too lazy, Bruce.
I don't know if it was that, even if I'm honest. It just felt like I was always fighting It just felt like I was always fighting the frame, like especially when you're gassing it. It just didn't want to turn nicely like these two could and would. But the engine itself, so zero traction control, was cracking. Like I really did enjoy
loads of feel.
Yeah,
I didn't need traction control.
No, it didn't. I think that's the thing that, you know, with these bikes, they do make big power, but it's manageable power. We've got into this society now where, you know, you see a sports tourer, or you know, even a touring bike, and it's got traction control. It's got every rider mode and rider aid. These bikes here actually kind of signify the start of all those rider aids.
Correct. Yeah.
But the beauty of all of them is that you can turn everything off.
Them off.
You know, ABS and you know,
and where the modern bikes now are actually better with them on.
Yeah.
These ones, not so. In fact, this is the only one here with the analog suspension, isn't it? It doesn't have the electronics, but it's got some really good trick.
Yeah, and that was quite nice on track, Tim, wasn't it? Because if I felt most connected to this bike through conventional suspension, which again, maybe it's just because these two were pioneering tech at that time, that they weren't as refined as now what we know electronic suspension can be. Yeah, but actually, this here, you threw it in, you knew it was going to be hard work through some of the faster corners or maybe direction changes or whatever, but you could always feel what was going on, and especially through that front tyre. And I loved the buzz of that motor. It was so punchy, just wanted to kind of loft the thing everywhere. And yeah, it was exciting. It did make a lot of noise. I was constantly riding, checking the temperature to make sure it didn't just rattle and blow up. That was a concern.
Worst bit for me had to be the gearing. It seemed like it needed probably 2 or 3 teeth more on the rear.
Yes, really long, isn't it?
Keep the thing singing, and
it's not quite a 5-blade spec.
No,
is it?
not quite as bad as
Whole
that.
of Cadwell in 2 gears.
But it just, like, you know when you're going into a corner and you want to just get in nice and get off the front brake and just roll through. This thing, it felt like you had to hold on to the front brake longer, else you were just going to run straight off the track.
Yeah.
It just just pushing you into corners, wasn't it?
I couldn't believe that. I mean, you warned me again about the lack of engine braking, but yeah, it was like, what's going on? This is the big V-twin.
Needed some pullback.
Yeah, it was ever so bizarre, and something you had to kind of get used to. But I definitely warmed to this, and I think it's one of those bikes. I said to you after my last session that maybe I'd increase the ride height at the rear or something like that, you know, just to try and help it steer a bit sharper. But I think that of all 3 of these bikes on the track, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think this is the one I'd actually go for. It's the one I'd have the most fun on, that is for sure.
If I had to choose one for road and track, it would be this one.
Yeah. What about you, Johnny?
Same.
If you had to pick one bike.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's the Ducati. It's got a bit more about it, I suppose. It's probably the best way of putting it.
Charisma.
Is that right? I don't know if that's
What are you
the
saying,
right
Bruce?
Well, I'm going to spice things up. I'm
Yeah,
going to say...
if that thing's too shouty and demanding, this is a little bit
lackluster.
A bit too easy.
Too obliging.
This is right in the middle. You know, you got to adapt to its architecture. You've got the different engine. You've got the slower steering that comes with the whole layout of the chassis, and you know, I kind of like that.
Yeah. I think, do you know what?
And it looks amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to break it down this simply. If I had to buy a bike on looks, I'd go for the MV. If I wanted a bike that was going to be great to ride on the road and take on track days, I'd get the BMW. If I wanted something that was going to kind of keep me on my toes, entertain me, sound awesome, draw the looks, I'll go for the Ducati. But the great thing about this test is we didn't set out to find a winner.
No.
We set out to explore
Options.
and a generation of bikes that were special back in their time, and to just kind of see if they're still special today. And I think the great thing is they still are. We still want them. It's been a cracking test. I really enjoyed it, and just got to save a few pennies and get one in the garage.
Can we do it again next year at 3 more?